My alien bodyguard was cold and silent till she slipped into my bed at night. Captain Ryan Black walked down the long steel hallway of Starbase Valor. Everything around him looked clean and advanced, with bright lights and smooth metal walls. But his eyes were fixed on one figure waiting at the end of the hall. She was tall, still, and silent, wearing dark armor that hugged her body like a second skin. Her skin was black like polished stone, and her long white hair was tied back tight. Two glowing silver eyes stared straight ahead, cold and unreadable. This was Celia, his new bodyguard. Ryan stopped a few steps away from her, expecting a greeting, but she didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there like a statue with a heartbeat. Another officer stepped beside him and handed him a small data chip. "Captain, meet Celia of the Varnari," the officer said. She was assigned by Central Security. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "She doesn't talk much, does she?" "She speaks when needed," the officer replied, "but she's deadly, loyal, and fast. She'll protect you with her life." Ryan turned back to her. "All right then," he said, unsure if she even heard him. Celia gave a slow nod, but her face stayed cold. No smile, no reaction. That was how it began. For the next 3 days, she followed him everywhere. From meetings with alien diplomats to boring security briefings, she always walked 2 steps behind him. Never close enough to be noticed, but never too far to protect him. She didn't talk unless he spoke first, and even then, her answers were short and stiff. Yes, Captain. No, Captain. Confirmed. Ryan didn't like it at first. He felt like a criminal being watched, not protected. He tried asking her small questions during meals, like, "Where are you from?" or "Do you miss your home?" She never answered with more than 1 or 2 words. Sometimes she didn't answer at all. But one thing became clear: she was always watching. Her eyes scanned every room, every shadow, every person near him. She moved with the quiet grace of a hunter. Even when she stood still, she was ready to strike. Then something changed. Late one evening, Ryan returned to his quarters after a long strategy session. He was tired, his head full of numbers and politics. But when he turned the corner, he stopped in surprise. Celia was standing in front of his door, completely still, hands behind her back, watching the hallway. "You don't need to stand there." "All night," he said, trying to sound polite. She didn't reply, only gave a small nod. Ryan stepped into his room and let the door close behind him. But sleep didn't come easily that night. He kept thinking about her, about the way she stood outside like a shadow. Did she even sleep? Did she ever relax? The next morning, when he opened the door, she was still there. Same position, same expression. He stared at her for a moment, then said, "You stayed here the whole night." "I'm your protector," she said quietly. "I stay where danger can come." He didn't know how to respond to that, so he just nodded and walked to the mess hall. She followed, as always. At breakfast, he asked her again, "Do you always guard your clients like this?" "I guard who I choose," she replied, not looking at him. That surprised him. "You chose to protect me?" he asked. "Yes," she said, then looked away like she had said too much. That night, he sat alone in his room, thinking about her. Words. Why would a Varnari, one of the strongest and proudest warrior species in the galaxy, choose to protect a human like him? There was something strange about her silence, something hidden in the way she avoided looking into his eyes for too long. It wasn't coldness, it was fear, or maybe guilt. He wanted to ask her, but he didn't want to push too hard. Instead, he left his door unlocked, something he never did before. He didn't know why. Maybe part of him wanted her to come in. Or maybe he wanted to see if she would. She didn't enter that night, but he could feel her presence on the other side of the door, and somehow that made him feel Sci-Fi even more curious. Who was she, really? And what was she running from? The ship rocked as the emergency lights flashed red. Ryan grabbed the edge of the control table. Eyes wide. Ambush. Someone shouted over the comms. Unknown hostiles near docking ring 3. Ryan was on his feet, heart pounding, before he realized she was already there. Celia had moved faster than anyone else. Her black armor shimmered like water under the red warning lights. She pulled him close and pushed him behind the wall just before a sharp explosion cracked through the hallway. Gunfire rang out. Alien voices barked strange orders. But Celia didn't flinch. She drew her blade from her back, long, curved, and glowing with faint energy. The next few seconds felt like a dream to Ryan. Or maybe a nightmare. She moved like a ghost, silent and fast, slashing through 2 attackers before they could even raise their weapons. She didn't stop, didn't hesitate, just protected him like it was the only thing that mattered. When the last attacker dropped, she turned to him, eyes scanning his body for wounds. "You're not hurt," she said. Not asking, just stating a fact. Ryan nodded, still breathing hard. "What? Who were they?" "Not pirates," she said quietly. Too well trained, that answer didn't help. Celia touched her ear, sent a coded signal. Then stepped closer to him. "Come, Captain," she said. "We're not safe here." They moved. Quickly through the emergency corridors, Ryan's legs felt heavy, his mind spinning. All he could think about was how calm she looked, how controlled. Even after killing 6 armed fighters in seconds, back in the command room, guards were posted and doors sealed, but Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. He sat down in the corner, staring at Celia as she stood facing the door, unmoving. Hours passed. No one spoke. Most of the station returned to normal. But something in the air stayed tense. Finally, Ryan stood and walked over to her. "You saved my life," he said, softly. "Thank you." She didn't answer. "Why? Don't you ever talk to me?" he asked, not angry, just tired. "I talk when needed," she replied. Eyes still locked on the hallway. "But I don't need a wall," he said. "I need someone I can trust, someone real." This time, her eyes flicked to his for a moment. Then she looked away. "You shouldn't trust me," she said, voice low. "It's not safe." That confused him more. "What do you mean?" But she didn't reply. Later that night, Ryan sat in his room. The lights dim, his thoughts loud. He stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. His mind replayed the fight, the way she moved, the fearlessness, the control, and yet there was something broken behind her silver eyes, something sad. He was still awake when he heard it. A soft sound near the door, barely a whisper. He sat up slowly, the sheets slipping off his chest. The door hadn't opened, but he could feel her presence. A second later, he saw her shadow on the wall. She was standing right outside, unmoving. Again, he waited, breath held, but she didn't enter. And yet, she didn't leave either. She stayed there the whole night. Not because of duty, he now realized, but because she was scared. Not for him, for herself. Something was coming for her, and she wasn't sure she could stop it alone. The rain on the outer dome made a soft tapping sound, a quiet rhythm that filled the silence of Ryan's quarters. He sat at the edge of the bed, eyes half closed, holding a warm mug of stim tea. Sleep had become impossible since the ambush. But what haunted him wasn't the fight. It was the way Celia stood outside his door afterward, silent and still, like a guardian statue with a broken heart. At exactly 2 hours past midnight, the door opened slowly, without a sound. Ryan looked up, startled, but said nothing. Celia stepped in, no armor this time, just a dark bodysuit that revealed the full strength of her frame. Her white hair fell freely down her back, wet at the tips from walking in the outer corridors. She stood at the doorway for a moment, as if unsure she was allowed. Then she stepped forward and sat on the floor near the bed, her back to the wall, knees drawn up slightly. She didn't say anything, and neither did he. Minutes passed like that. Then she whispered, her voice soft and dry. I have not slept in 3 nights. Ryan turned his head slowly. Why? There is something close, she said, her silver eyes not meeting his. It hunts. He frowned. The same ones who attacked us. She shook her head. Worse. Then she finally looked at him, and for the first time, her expression wasn't cold, was tired, afraid, and maybe something else. They're not after you, she said. They're after me. Ryan set his cup down carefully. Why? She was quiet again, then answered with a voice so soft he almost missed it. Because I ran from my own kind. The words didn't make sense at first. He waited, not pushing her, just letting the silence hold space for her story, and slowly she told it, broken piece by broken piece. She had once been part of the Royal Guard of the Varnari, elite warriors raised from birth to fight without fear, but during a mission on a human colony world. She had been given an order to eliminate all survivors after an alien bombing. That included a human child, maybe 6 years old. She didn't do it. She picked the child up and ran, hid the girl, protected her, and when her commanders found out, they marked her as a traitor. Now she was being hunted not by strangers, but by the same warriors she once trained beside. I broke the oath, she whispered, and for that, they will never stop. Ryan didn't know what to say. He stared at her, trying to understand how someone who looked so powerful could be so alone. Why did you save that girl? He asked. You were a soldier, right? Celia nodded slowly. But I was also alive. Then her voice dropped even lower, and for a moment, I remembered what that meant. The room felt heavy, full of things unsaid. Ryan moved from the bed and sat beside her on the floor, close but not touching. I'm not afraid of you, he said. And I'm not letting them take you. Celia didn't react for a long moment. Then she looked at him again, her eyes softer now, and something in her face almost looked like relief. But still, she didn't smile. She simply whispered, Then? You are a fool, he chuckled. Probably. And then, slowly, her head leaned back against the wall, and her eyes closed. For the first time in days, she let her guard down. Not completely, but enough. She didn't speak again that night, but she stayed, and when Ryan woke up hours later, she hadn't moved an inch. Checked. Now, her head was tilted toward him, like she'd been watching him sleep, not as a guard, but as someone who didn't want to be alone anymore. The days passed, but something had changed between them. Celia still stood guard, still moved like a shadow, still avoided the eyes of others. But now, when she looked at Ryan, she didn't look through him. She looked at him, and sometimes, just for a moment, she let her walls drop. Ryan started noticing things, small scars on her arms, a burn mark near her collarbone, the way her fingers twitched slightly when someone raised their voice. She wasn't just a warrior. She was someone who had seen too much and survived it, all by locking every feeling deep inside. He waited until they were alone in the private hangar bay, away from cameras and ears. The lights were low, the place empty except for quiet humming machines. She was working on her armor, her fingers moving with precision. Ryan sat nearby, watching her in silence, before finally asking, What happened after you saved that child? Her hands paused. Then she stood up and faced him, eyes hard but tired. They hunted me, she said. They sent 2 full units to track me across 3 systems. He swallowed. Did they catch you? She nodded slowly. Yes. Her voice turned distant, cold. They didn't kill me right away. Varnari law demands punishment before death. What kind of punishment? She turned away, walking a few steps, like she couldn't look at him while speaking. They stripped me of my caste rank, took my blood oath blade, and burned the skin behind my neck, removing my family mark. Ryan stood slowly, shocked. That's exile, he said. You were erased. Celia's voice became hollow. To them, I'm already dead. The words hit him hard. She had chosen mercy over duty, and for that, her people destroyed everything she was. But what shook him most was how calm she sounded, like she had accepted it long ago. Ryan stepped closer. And you still protect humans after that? She looked at him then, her silver eyes not glowing but dim. Like starlight behind clouds, it wasn't humans who betrayed me. She said, it was my own. He didn't know what to say, so he just stood there beside her. The silence between them, heavy but real. Then, without a word, she handed him a small piece of armor, her left pauldron. It had deep claw marks across it, and the Varnari symbol carved into the edge, now scorched and broken. This was the last piece I kept. She said, the only part they couldn't take from me. Ryan ran his fingers along the edge. Why give it to me? Her answer was almost a whisper. Because if I die soon, I don't want to leave without someone knowing who I really was. He looked at her, heart tight in his chest. You're not going to die, he said firmly. Not while I'm alive. For a moment, her breath caught. Then she turned away. Again, hiding something in her expression that night. As the station lights dimmed and the hallways emptied, Ryan lay awake. He thought about everything she had told him. The pain, the exile, the sacrifice. He thought about how someone so feared could feel so forgotten, and how close she sat to him now, even in silence. Round 3 in the morning, he heard his door slide open. Soft footsteps, slow and hesitant. Then he felt the bed shift slightly. He opened his eyes. And there she was, Celia, kneeling beside the bed. Not armored, not guarded, just her. Her voice trembled as she spoke. If they come for me tonight, I don't want to face them alone. Ryan sat up slowly, saying nothing, just watching her. Then he pulled the blanket aside. Offering her space, she hesitated, then climbed in carefully. As if afraid she might break the moment, she didn't touch him, didn't speak again. She just lay there beside him, eyes open, facing the door, and for the first time since they met, she looked peaceful. The room was silent, except for the sound of her breathing, slow and steady beside him. Ryan lay still, unsure if he was dreaming or wide awake. Celia deadly. Distant Celia was lying in his bed, eyes open, her body tense under the sheets. She hadn't moved since slipping in, hadn't spoken a word since that soft, trembling request, but the fear was there, thick in the air between them. Hours passed. She never once closed her eyes. Her fingers curled and uncurled slowly, as if waiting for the first sound of footsteps. The first flicker of danger. Ryan turned slightly toward her, speaking in a low voice. Are they close? She nodded once. They're already on the station. His chest tightened. The ones who exiled you. Worse, she said. Those who enjoy the hunt. He sat up, the weight of her words chilling his spine. They know where you are. They don't care where I am, she whispered. They just want to see me run. She turned her head toward him slowly, her glowing eyes softer now, tired. I don't want to run anymore. Ryan stared at her, feeling something shift inside him. This wasn't the same warrior who killed without blinking. This was someone who had lost everything and was now holding on to the one thing she could still choose. Him. He reached out and gently touched her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked at their hands for a moment like it was something strange and new. Then she said quietly, your skin is warm. He gave a small smile. Yours is ice. Her lips twitched. Not a smile, but something close. They lay like that, silent, connected by that small touch. Until the lights in the hallway flickered once, Celia's head snapped toward the door. Am I? Every muscle in her body tightening. They're here, she said, voice suddenly sharp and low. Ryan sat up, heart pounding. What do we do? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she slowly stood up and crossed the room to where her armor sat in the corner. Piece by piece, she strapped it back on arms. Chest legs her movements, smooth and fast, as she reached for her blade. She stopped and looked back at him. "You should stay here." He shook his head. "No. You'll get killed, then I die with you, for the first time." She truly looked surprised. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes wider. Then she gave a slow nod, accepting something she had been too afraid to believe. "Then stand behind me," she said. "Okay." Her voice quieter now, "and don't let go." They left the room together, Celia leading, Ryan close behind. The halls were darker than usual, the lights dimming in strange patterns. Like something was tampering with the systems. They reached the security deck, but the guards were gone. No blood, no sign of struggle, just gone. Celia moved like a shadow, silent and deadly. Ryan could barely keep up with her speed, her focus, and yet, even in that tense moment, she kept glancing back to make sure he was still there. They reached the outer ring. Near the docking tunnels, then the air changed, heavy, electric. Wrong. Celia raised her hand, signaling him to stop. She stepped forward slowly, her blade out, now glowing faintly in the dark. That's when he saw them, three figures stepping from the shadows, their armor darker than night, marked with red slash symbols across the chest. They didn't speak, didn't explain. One of them pointed, and the others rushed in. Celia moved first, too fast to follow. Ryan watched as she slammed into one, disarming him with a twist of her wrist and driving her blade through the second attacker's side. The third grabbed her arm and swung, but she ducked, kicked him into the wall, and turned just in time to stop a hidden fourth from stabbing her. Back, Ryan stood frozen, but she didn't need help. She was the storm. But even a storm can break. One of them got a lucky strike, cutting across her side. Armor cracking with a sickening sound, she stumbled, and that's when Ryan ran in, grabbing the weapon of a fallen attacker and smashing it into the last one's leg. Together, they stood over the bodies, breathing hard, bleeding, but alive. Celia looked at him, eyes wide. "You fought for me." "Oh, I said I would," he replied. Breathing heavy, "I'm not letting you face this alone." She didn't say anything back, but the way she looked at him, like he was the only person left in the galaxy, that said everything. The medbay was dim and nearly empty. Flickering lights above buzzed softly. Broken from the earlier fight, Celia sat on the edge of the cold metal table, blood still dripping from the deep cut along her ribs. She didn't wince, didn't even flinch. But Ryan could see the pain in her eyes. He stood beside her, wrapping a clean bandage around her side, his hands steady. Neither of them spoke for a long time. "You should have stayed in the room," she whispered finally, voice hoarse, and "let you fight them alone," he replied. "Not a chance." Her eyes lifted to meet his, silver light dimmed by exhaustion. "You could have died." He tied the bandage with care, then said softly, "So could you." She looked away, as if she couldn't bear the truth in that. "Is that all of them?" He asked. "No," she said. "There are more." She slid off the table, standing slowly. "They won't stop. Not until I'm dead." He reached out and gently caught her wrist. "Then we don't let them finish it, for the first time." She didn't pull away. Her hand stayed in his, fingers twitching slightly unsure. Untrained in this kind of contact, this kind of warmth. An alarm blared suddenly, sharp and cold. Ryan turned to the screen, multiple breach alerts, blinking. Red across the station's outer wall. "They're attacking again." He said, "No," Celia said quietly. "They're not just hunting me anymore." She looked straight at him, her voice flat. "They've decided to destroy everything around me." They ran through the emergency corridors, red lights, painting. The halls like war zones, security was scattered. Most of the station in lockdown. Explosions echoed in the distance, small ones. Targeted, tactical, whoever had come for her. They weren't here to finish a personal mission. They were here to erase a name, a memory, a witness. They reached the command center just as two guards were thrown back by an invisible blast. The enemy was already inside, cloaked. Fast, vicious. Celia didn't hesitate. She pulled her backup blade from her boot and leaped into the fight. Ryan stayed close, grabbing a stun blaster from the wall panel, firing where she pointed, trusting her movements like second nature. He didn't think, just acted. When one of the attackers aimed for her back, he dove in, taking the hit across his arm instead. Pain shot through him, but he didn't stop. He tackled the enemy to the ground, buying her the half-second she needed to end the fight. When it was over, the floor was covered in scorched marks and broken metal. Celia dropped to one knee, blood pouring from her leg where she'd taken another hit. Ryan rushed to her, falling beside her, pressing his hand to the wound. She looked at him, blinking. Slowly, her breathing rough. "I told you not to follow me," she whispered. "And I told you. I don't care," he said back. "I'm not letting you go down like this." Her head leaned against his shoulder, her voice cracking for the first time. "I don't understand you. You don't need to," he whispered, holding her tighter. "You just need to stay with me." Outside the command deck, more sirens began to rise. Backup was finally arriving. Too late to save anyone, but just in time to clean up the wreckage. Inside, Ryan held Celia as her armor flickered and dimmed, the energy core failing from damage. She wasn't moving much now, but her hand never let go of his shirt, as if holding him kept her tethered to something real. The storm hadn't passed yet, but they had survived again. Together, broken, bleeding, but alive, and for the first time. Since they met, Celia didn't look like a bodyguard. She looked like someone who had finally found a reason to fight for herself. The stars outside the window moved slowly as the ship left the orbital field. Inside, the medical bay lights were low, humming gently. Celia lay in the recovery pod, her armor gone, replaced by soft healing gel along her wounds. Wires monitored her pulse, oxygen levels, and brain activity, but Ryan wasn't watching the screen. He was watching her. She had barely spoken since the final attack. Not because of the pain, but because she knew what was coming. High Command had sent a message just minutes after the battle ended. Celia's presence had drawn too much attention, too much risk. They gave her a choice: return to Varnari space and face her sentence, or be exiled further into unclaimed systems. They didn't mention what Ryan already knew. The first option was death. The second was running forever. Ryan leaned over the pod and spoke softly. "We don't have to go back." Celia opened her eyes slowly, her voice low and rough. "They'll chase us." "Let them," he said. "Let them come." His hand touched hers, warm against her cold fingers. "I'd rather run with you than live safe without you." She didn't answer for a while, her eyes studying his face. "You're not afraid." "I am," he said, "but not of them." He paused, then added, "I'm afraid of losing you." Something in her face cracked, not physically, but something deeper. Her eyes shimmered with light that wasn't just from the healing pod. And then she said something he never expected to hear. "You make me feel alive again." The next hour passed in silence. Not heavy, but calm. Outside the ship, the station faded into the dark, left behind like a memory neither of them wanted to carry any more. Celia sat up, wincing slightly as she pulled herself from the pod. Ryan moved to help, but she held up her hand. "I can walk," she said, with a small smile that barely reached her lips, but it was real. They made their way to the cockpit together. The stars stretched ahead, an endless path of unknowns. Ryan leaned over the console, setting a random course in charted space. Low surveillance, nothing official, a place no one would think to look. Celia stood beside him, still wearing the bandage around her side, her white hair now loose around Her shoulders, she looked at him with those silver eyes. No longer cold, no longer silent. What now? She asked. He looked at her and smiled. Now you're not my bodyguard anymore. She tilted her head slightly, confused. Then what am I? Ryan stepped closer, their hands meeting again between the pilot chairs. You're mine, he said, and I'm yours. Her breath hitched, not from pain, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time: safety, belonging, something she didn't believe existed anymore. As the ship jumped into hyperspace, the light outside warped into streaks of blue and white. The hum of the engines filled the silence, and somewhere deep inside, where no blade could reach, no enemy could touch, Celia smiled, not with her mouth, but with her soul. She had been built to protect, trained to obey, forced to survive, but now for the first time she chose to live with him. Even if the galaxy hunted them forever, they wouldn't face it alone. Not anymore.